I've replayed that night, like a dash cam loop, over and over in my mind, each detail etched sharper with every pass. The clatter of forks against porcelain plates, the warm, herby smell of rosemary chicken mingling with the comforting aroma of fresh-baked bread from Patricia's old oven, the one she'd used to bake loaves for the grandkids on lazy Sundays. The light above her parents' dining table was too bright, too clean, casting shadows that felt unnaturally sharp, like they were hiding something just out of sight. I'd agonized over the shirt I chose that evening, settling on something plain and unassuming, the kind that wouldn't draw any commentary from Patricia, who had a way of noticing everything. In the quiet of the car ride over, I'd rehearse the version of myself I always tried to present to Sarah's family: agreeable, helpful, the man who keeps the peace, no matter the cost. We were gathered there to celebrate Robert's retirement, a long, grueling life in logistics marked by two bad knees from years on warehouse floors and a gentle stubbornness that made him both lovable and utterly impossible to argue with. Patricia had set out place cards on the table because in that house, tradition was like a piece of heirloom furniture, polished to a shine, heavy with history, and never to be moved or questioned. I sat beside my wife Sarah, across from her older sister Mia, whose laugh still carried like a clear bell, even when exhaustion tugged at her edges. At the far end of the table, her younger brother Jake hunched over his phone, drawing the whole room into the private glow of his screen. And there, arriving just a bit late, with his usual broad grin, was Mia's husband Alex, the guy who'd once helped us haul a couch up 3 flights of stairs during our move, who'd grilled burgers in our backyard, like we were all part of one big unbreakable patchwork family. But that night, his smile seemed a little too sharp, like a blade tucked neatly into a pocket. The kids were there too, our little ones adding to the chaos in the best way. Lily, our 5-year-old daughter, with her endless questions and sticky fingers from sneaking cookies earlier, and Tommy, our 3-year-old son, who was already nodding off in his booster seat, clutching a toy truck like it was his lifeline. They represented everything we'd built, or so I thought, the picture of the ideal American family, rooted in hard work and shared dreams. Robert and Patricia had always emphasized those values: family-first honesty, above all the kind of principles that got them through tough times, like when the economy dipped and they nearly lost the house. That's when we'd stepped in. Dipping into the family fund, I'd contributed to heavily from my overtime shifts to keep things afloat. It was our safety net, a symbol of trust and sacrifice. As the first round of stories flowed work anecdotes from Robert's warehouse days, small town, I've replayed that night like a dash cam loop, over and over in my mind, each detail etched sharper with every pass. The clatter of forks against porcelain plates, the warm, herby smell of rosemary chicken, mingling with a comforting aroma of fresh-baked bread from Patricia's old oven, the one she'd used to bake loaves for the grandkids on lazy Sundays. The light above her parents' dining table was too bright, too clean, casting shadows that felt unnaturally sharp, like they were hiding something just out of sight. I'd agonized over the shirt I chose that evening, settling on something plain and unassuming, the kind that wouldn't draw any commentary from Patricia, who had a way of noticing everything. In the quiet of the car ride over, I'd rehearse the version of myself I always tried to present to Sarah's family: agreeable, helpful, the man who keeps the peace, no matter the cost. We were gathered there to celebrate Robert's retirement, a long, grueling life in logistics marked by two bad knees from years on warehouse floors, and a gentle stubbornness that made him both lovable and utterly impossible to argue with. Patricia had set out place cards on the table because in that house, tradition was like a piece of heirloom furniture polished to a shine heavy with history and never to be moved or questioned. I sat beside my wife Sarah, across from her older sister Mia, whose laugh still carried like a clear bell, even when exhaustion tugged at her edges. At the far end of the table, her younger brother Jake hunched over his phone, drawing the whole room into the private glow of his screen. And there, arriving just a bit late with his usual broad grin, was Mia's husband Alex, the guy who'd once helped us haul a couch up 3 flights of stairs during our move, who'd grilled burgers in our backyard, like we were all part of one big, unbreakable patchwork family. But that night, his smile seemed a little too sharp, like a blade tucked neatly into a pocket. The kids were there too, our little ones adding to the chaos in the best way. Lily, our 5-year-old daughter, with her endless questions and sticky fingers from sneaking cookies earlier, and Tommy, our 3-year-old son, who was already nodding off in his booster seat, clutching a toy truck like it was his lifeline. They represented everything we'd built, or so I thought, the picture of the ideal American family, rooted in hard work and shared dreams. Robert and Patricia had always emphasized those values: family-first honesty, above all the kind of principles that got them through tough times, like when the economy dipped and they nearly lost the house. That's when we'd stepped in, dipping into the family fund I'd contributed to heavily from my overtime shifts to keep things afloat. It was our safety net, a symbol of trust and sacrifice. As the first round of stories flowed work anecdotes from Robert's warehouse days, small-town gossip about neighbors we'd all known forever, everything felt deceptively warm. But underneath, I couldn't shake the unease. I'd been replaying not just that night, but the cracks that had been forming for months. Flashbacks crept in our early marriage, that spontaneous kiss at a gas station in Iowa during our first road trip, when love felt like an endless highway stretching out forever. But lately, Sarah had been distant, her explanations for late nights feeling like fragile bridges over widening gaps. I remembered how she'd saved Alex from some financial jam years ago, insisting on loaning him money from our savings, our family fund claiming it was just to help Mia's family through a rough patch. Alex had always been quick to repay favors, offering to run errands for Sarah when I was buried in work, their inside jokes at family barbecues lingering a beat too long. I'd brushed it off, then telling myself it was nothing but now. Those moments replayed like warning signs I should have heeded. I'd sacrificed sleep for weeks, grinding through extra hours at the office to build a future for us for Lily and Tommy, while Sarah seemed to be carving out a separate world where I was just a faint outline. The family fund was dwindling without clear reason. Odd withdrawals she dismissed as unexpected expenses, and her stories about late evenings didn't add up. As Patricia passed the breadbasket, her eyes twinkling with pride over Robert's retirement, I felt the weight of it all pressing down like the polished traditions of this house were starting to crack under secrets too heavy to hold. Gossip about neighbors we'd all known forever, everything felt deceptively warm. But underneath, I couldn't shake the unease. I'd been replaying not just that night, but the cracks that had been forming for months. Flashbacks crept in our early marriage, that spontaneous kiss at a gas station in Iowa during our first road trip, when love felt like an endless highway stretching out forever. But lately, Sarah had been distant, her explanations for late nights feeling like fragile bridges over widening gaps. I remembered how she'd saved Alex from some financial jam years ago, insisting on loaning him money from our savings. Our family fund claiming it was just to help Mia's family through a rough patch. Alex had always been quick to repay favors, offering to run errands for Sarah when I was buried in work, their inside jokes at family barbecues lingering a beat too long. I'd brushed it off, then telling myself it was nothing, but now those moments replayed like warning signs I should have heeded. I'd sacrifice sleep for weeks, grinding through extra hours at the office to build a future for us, for Lily and Tommy, while Sarah seemed to be carving out a separate world where I was just a faint outline. The family fund was dwindling, without clear reason, odd withdrawals she dismissed as unexpected expenses, and her stories about late evenings didn't add up. As Patricia passed the bread basket, her eyes twinkling with pride over Robert's retirement, I felt the weight of it all pressing down, like the polished traditions of this house were starting to crack under secrets too heavy to hold. The table hummed with the kind of warmth families lean into when they're trying to hold on to something solid, but beneath it, I could feel the air tightening like a string pulled taut before it snaps. The rosemary chicken sat half-eaten, the bread basket, now a scattering of crumbs, and the kids had been ushered to the living room to play with their toys, Lily's giggles drifting faintly through the doorway. Robert was in the middle of a story about a warehouse mix-up from '98, his hands waving like he was directing trucks in his mind, when Patricia's voice cut through sharp and curious like a church bell ringing out of turn. Sarah, we never did hear how that late night turned out. The one with the flat tire and picking up Lily from her art class. Her words hung there heavy with that maternal tone that could unearth secrets without ever raising its pitch. Sarah's hand froze on her wine glass. The stem caught between her fingers like she was holding her breath in crystal. It was nothing she said, flashing a smile at her father that didn't quite reach her eyes. Just a stupid screw in the tread. AAA came sorted it out. She nodded toward me, casual but deliberate got there after it was all handled. Right, James? Her eyes flicked to mine, a silent plea to play along to keep the room warm and uncomplicated. Everyone turned to me, their gazes soft but expectant, waiting for me to nod, confirm the tidy story, and pass the mashed potatoes. On any other night, I might have done it. I'd spent years perfecting that role, James the peacekeeper, the one who smooths the edges of Sarah's half-told tales to keep the family's patchwork quilt intact. But I hadn't slept right. In weeks, my dreams tangled with questions I couldn't shake. I'd watched Sarah build a scaffolding of half-truths around one particular Tuesday, a night she'd claimed was spent picking up Lily. Late from an art class, I knew I'd handled myself. The weight of it was bending us into stranger shapes. Our marriage no longer a highway, but a maze of dead ends and locked doors. There were other nights, 2 flashbacks that flickered like bad film reels, her phone buzzing with texts from an unsaved number, her quick, "Oh, it's just Kara," when I asked the faint trace of a cologne I didn't own lingering in her car. And that barbecue last summer, when I'd caught her and Alex whispering near the cooler, their hands brushing in a way that felt too deliberate to be an accident, their laughter stopping the moment I approached. "I don't think that's quite how it went," I said, my voice betraying me with a small tremor, like a crack in a frozen lake. The words slipped out before I could stop them, and the table did that thing families do, a collective inhale, a silence that rings louder than any shout. Sarah's smile tightened her eyes, flashing with a warning, "Not here, not now, not like this." Maybe she was right. Maybe this polished dining room with its place cards and heirloom plates wasn't the place to weigh the truth in front of people who'd try to sand down its edges into something palatable. But I couldn't unsee that Tuesday anymore. The pin drop she'd sent me an hour later than she'd claimed, pointing to a street nowhere near Lily's art class. The text that turned to one-word replies, "Fine, busy. Phone died. And the family fund, our safety net, built on my overtime, and Robert's pension had been bleeding quietly. Withdrawals she brushed off as school fees or car repairs, though the numbers never added up." That's not what happened. I repeated softer but steadier. AAA couldn't find the location. "I got your text with the pin drop way later than you said, Sarah. And when I got there, the tire wasn't flat. The car was fine. My pulse throbbed in my gums, a dull ache that matched the growing tension in the room." Robert cleared his throat, his fork hovering over his plate. "So what did happen then?" he asked, his voice low, like he was inspecting a shipment that didn't match the manifest. Sarah laughed a bright, brittle sound. "He got confused," she said, her eyes still on her father, avoiding mine. "He's been stressed. You know how work's been for him." She faltered, searching for a word that wouldn't cut too deep, then landed on one that was tidy enough to dismiss me. "Overwhelmed." Overwhelmed, I echoed the word, tasting like ash. Overwhelmed wasn't the half of it. I was drowning in the gaps of her stories, in the way she'd started locking her phone, in the way she'd lean into Alex at family gatherings, their errands together, stretching longer than any grocery run should. And the fund, our family's lifeline, the one we'd poured into, for Lily and Tommy, for Robert and Patricia's retirement, was shrinking. And I couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah's unexpected expenses were tied to something or someone else. "Don't do this, James," she whispered, still smiling for the table, but her voice carried a plea wrapped in steel. I could have let it drop. I could have let the evening slide back into the safe, practiced forgetting that families build their foundations on. But then Alex chimed in, his grin too easy, his hand clapping my shoulder like we were still buddies. "Come on, man, it's just a mix-up. Let's not ruin Robert's big night." His eyes met Sarah's for a fraction of a second, a glance so quick it might have been nothing, but it wasn't. It was a signal, a secret shared in plain sight, and it lit a fuse in me I didn't know was burning. I checked the camera. I said the words spilling out like they'd been waiting for months. Mia's head tipped, her bell-like laugh gone silent. "What camera?" she asked, her voice curious, but edged with something heavier, like she'd already sensed the ground shifting. "The one over our garage," I said. We installed it after those package thefts last year. It picks up the driveway. That Tuesday, it caught everything. My heart pounded each beat, a hammer against my ribs. Your car came home at 2:17 a.m. Sarah, a rideshare dropped you off. You told me you were with Kara picking up Lily, but Kara texted me later worried you weren't answering. And Lily was already home with me. Sarah's smile cracked just for a moment before she stitched it back together. You're making this up, she said, her diction careful, the kind she used when she wanted to sound calm enough to win. You're seeing things that aren't there, James. You're tired. But her voice shook, and I could see the panic flickering behind her eyes like a runner realizing there's no road left to outrun what's chasing her. The room felt smaller now, the walls closing in as Jake lowered his phone, his usual distraction forgotten. Patricia's hands fidgeted with her napkin, and Robert's stubborn calm seemed to waver, his eyes darting between us. Mia leaned forward, her gaze steady, but searching like she was piecing together a puzzle she didn't want to finish. And Alex, he just sat there, his grin fading into something harder, something that made me wonder how long I'd been blind to the shadows moving through my own house. I thought of Lily and Tommy playing just beyond the door, oblivious to the storm brewing at this table. How could I let them grow up in a home stitched together with lies where trust was just a threadbare quilt unraveling under the weight of secrets? The air in the dining room thick and heavy with the kind of silence that feels like it's holding its breath, waiting for something to break. Sarah's words, "You're seeing things that aren't there." James hung like a frayed wire sparking with tension. I could feel the eyes of the table on me, Robert's steady gaze, Patricia's nervous fidgeting, Mia's quiet intensity, and Alex's too calm posture, his hands folded like he was waiting out a storm he'd already weathered. Jake's phone was down now, his teenage distraction abandoned, and even the faint hum of Lily and Tommy's laughter from the living room felt distant, like a memory of a safer time. I wanted to stop to rewind the night and play the part I'd always played, the man who nods, who passes the potatoes, who keeps the peace. But the truth I'd been circling for weeks was clawing its way out, and I couldn't shove it back down. I'm not seeing things. I said, my voice low, but steady now. Each word, a stone dropped into the stillness. The camera doesn't lie, Sarah. It caught you that night. It caught everything. My pulse thrummed in my gums, a dull ache that matched the heat creeping up my neck. I hadn't planned to say it like this, not here, not with her family watching, but the scaffolding of her half-truths was collapsing, and I was tired of propping it up. Sarah's face hardened, her eyes narrowing into slits of defiance. "You're a liar," she said, her voice even deliberate, the kind of calm she wielded like a weapon to make me doubt myself. And then before I could respond, her hand flew across the table, a sharp, stinging slap against my cheek. It wasn't hard, not the kind of blow that sends your head spinning, but it carried a weight heavier than force, a warning, a plea, a public humiliation wrapped in one small, enormous sound. The room froze. Forks stilled. Jake's jaw dropped. Patricia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, and Robert blinked, his stubborn calm cracking like old pavement. From the living room, Lily's voice pierced the silence, small and trembling. "Mommy, why'd you hit Daddy?" Tommy's wail, followed a high, confused cry that sliced through me like a blade. I turned to see them standing in the doorway, Lily clutching her toy rabbit. Tommy's face crumpled in tears, his truck forgotten on the floor. The heat rushed to my face, not just from the slap, but from the shame of it all, my kids watching their world tilting because I couldn't keep this storm contained. I didn't move, didn't raise my hand, didn't stand. I just stayed, because that's what I do. I stay until I can't. Enough, Patricia said, her voice wavering like a question, her eyes darting between Sarah and me, desperate to pull the evening back to its polished edges. But Sarah's ring had left a faint dent in my cheek, and the sting of it was nothing compared to the ache of knowing my kids had seen it. I'm not lying, I said softly to the table, to the dent in my cheek, to the children now clinging to Mia who'd rushed to scoop them up. I don't want to fight Sarah. I just want to stop living on two separate maps. My voice shook, but the words felt rounder than anger, heavy with the weight of months spent drowning in her secrets. Mia settled the kids back in the living room, whispering reassurances, but her face was tight when she returned her bell-like laugh, long gone. "Do you still have the footage?" she asked, her voice low, tired, like she was bracing for something she'd already suspected. "Yes," I said, surprising myself. I hadn't planned to go this far, to drag the raw truth into this room. But the word slipped out like it had been waiting there all along. I kept it. "The garage camera. It's clear." Mia's eyes flicked to Sarah, then back to me. "Let me see it," she said, not accusatory, just weary, like she was carrying her own map of doubts. Patricia started to protest. "We're not turning this dinner into a courtroom." But Robert raised a palm, his warehouse manager voice cutting through. "Let's just be sure he said to no one and everyone the way a man who'd spent decades sorting out messes speaks when he smells one he can't ignore." Sarah's breath quickened beside me, sharp and shallow like a runner with no road left to outrun the truth. Alex shifted in his seat, his grin replaced by a tight-lipped mask, his fingers drumming lightly on the table. "Come on, guys. This is getting out of hand," he said, his voice too smooth, too practiced. "It's probably nothing. Just a mix-up." But his eyes betrayed him, darting to Sarah in a way that made my stomach twist. We spilled into the living room, in a slow, cautious tide of bodies, the kids now quiet under Mia's care, their toys scattered like relics of a simpler night. The TV blinked awake, a blank rectangle that felt suddenly sacred, like it held the power to rewrite our lives. Robert stood with the remote, gripping it like a tool he trusted to fix this. Mia connected her phone, her fingers steady, but her face pale. I pulled out my phone, my hands clumsy, too big for the task, and airdropped the file. The progress ring crept around, agonizingly slow, each second stretching the silence tighter. The first frame appeared our driveway, an ordinary slab of concrete, turned wholly by the weight of evidence. The maple tree cast a dark lace over Sarah's car, its branches swaying in the ghostly gray of the night vision. Then a ride share pulled to the curb. The back door opened, and a figure stepped out, head down, jacket collar up. Sarah. She waved at the driver, a casual gesture, but then another figure leaned from the front seat, too close, their hand brushing the edge of the door. The car idled, then pulled away. The room rustled, a field bracing for a storm. "Pause," Patricia said, her voice thin pleading. Mia paused the footage, and Sarah put a hand to her throat, a gesture I knew too well. She was searching for a softer version of this moment to offer the room. I wished with a childish ache that I could hand her one. But the screen didn't care about wishes. It waited patient and unyielding. "Play Robert," said his voice, heavy final. The footage rolled. Sarah stood at the edge of the driveway, texting her phone glowing in the dark. Instead of heading to the front door, she walked to the passenger side of her car and opened it. The dome light bloomed, and there in the frame, a second figure rose, a silhouette turned human by the cot light. A man. They leaned toward each other, their heads close, and then clear as a blade through the gray, a kiss brief but unmistakable. A small bag sat between them, stuffed tight, like it held more than just belongings. The room went still, the hum of the house louder than our breaths. Mia zoomed in her thumb, trembling slightly. The man's wrist caught the light, revealing a small, unmistakable tattoo. A compass, its needle pointing north. I'd seen it dozens of times at barbecues at birthdays that long weekend at the lake when we'd all laughed like family. It was Alex's compass. Robert swore under his breath, a low, guttural sound. Patricia whispered, "Dear God," her hand frozen over her glass. Jake's voice broke the silence, sharp and stunned. "This is messed up." Sarah flinched her shoulders, seizing like a deer caught in headlights. "You're mistaken," she said, but the fight in her voice was gone, replaced by a hollow tremor. Mia didn't respond. She tapped her phone, rewinding 3 seconds, pausing again at the flare of light on Alex's wrist. And then, as if the screen hadn't already shattered us, a notification banner slid across her phone. Brief, but damning. "Alex, how's the dinner? Miss you already." With a heart emoji. Mia swiped it away, but not before the room saw it. Not before Sarah's breath caught like she'd hit a wall she hadn't seen coming. The first twist landed heavy and sharp, cutting through the lies like a blade. Alex wasn't just a family friend. He was the shadow in my wife's car, the man who'd smiled in my backyard while unraveling my life. And the bag, the one that looked too heavy for a casual night, hinted at something darker, something that made the betrayal feel not just personal, but like a theft of everything we'd built. The living room felt like a photograph frozen in time, the TV screen holding us hostage in its ghostly gray glow. Sarah's figure, a silhouette in the passenger seat of her own car, leaned toward Alex. Their kiss, a wound that pulsed in the silence. The bag between them, stuffed tight, seemed to throb with secrets heavier than I could name. Lily and Tommy's soft voices drifted from the next room where Mia had settled them with crayons and promises of ice cream, but their innocence only sharpened the ache in my chest. The compass tattoo on Alex's wrist glared from the paused footage, a small inked betrayal that rewrote years of barbecues, birthdays, and late-night card games where he'd clapped my shoulder and called me brother. The air thickened, the house humming under the weight of what we'd just seen. Nobody moved, nobody spoke, but the truth was no longer a shadow. It was a bomb, ticking louder with every second. Mia's thumb hovered over her phone, trembling as she zoomed in again, dragging the frame to the bag. The grainy footage caught a glint of paper inside a folded stack that looked too deliberate to be random. "What's that?" she asked, her voice low, not accusing yet, but laced with a hurt that ran deeper than words. Sarah's hand was still at her throat, her fingers twitching like she was trying to choke down a lie before it escaped. "It's nothing," she said too quickly, her diction unraveling. "Just my work stuff. Papers. You're blowing this out of proportion." But her eyes darted to Alex, and his face, once all easy grins and charm, tightened into something brittle like glass about to crack. "Play it again?" Robert said, his voice a warehouse foreman's command, steady but frayed at the edges. Mia tapped the screen, and the footage rolled forward. The dome light flared as Sarah and Alex leaned closer, their voices too faint for the camera to catch, but their gestures screamed intent. Alex's hand moved to the bag, his fingers brushing the papers as he spoke, and Sarah nodded, her expression sharp calculated. The audio was silent, but the image spoke loud enough. They were planning something that didn't belong in the driveway of our home at 2:17 a.m. Mia paused the footage again, zooming in on the papers. A corner of one sheet was visible, and though the text was blurry, a logo stood out, a bank logo, the same one tied to the family fund we'd all poured our trust into. "What the hell is this?" Mia's voice cracked, her bell-like laugh a distant memory. She turned to Sarah, her eyes searching her sister's face for an explanation that wouldn't break her. Are you two messing with the fund? Dad's retirement? The kids' college savings?" The question landed like a second slap, sharper than the one Sarah had dealt me. Robert's jaw tightened, a slow grind of realization, and Patricia's hand froze over her glass, her whispered, "Dear God," now a prayer for denial. I felt my own breath catch the pieces slotting together in a way that made my stomach lurch. Flashbacks flooded in the unexpected expenses Sarah had dismissed, the withdrawals from the family fund I'd noticed, but let slide because I trusted her. The time she'd said she loaned money to Kara for medical bills, only for Kara to mention later she'd never needed help. And Alex always there, offering to run errands with Sarah. His car parked too long outside our house. His help with her projects stretching into hours I couldn't account for. I'd checked our accounts last month late at night, when insomnia clawed at me, and found an email trail buried in a folder Sarah thought I'd never look at, showing transfers to an account I didn't recognize, signed with Alex's initials. I'd confronted her, and she'd laughed it off as bank errors. But now that bag in the footage felt like a confession I'd been too blind to read. "Sarah," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "what were you doing with our money?" Her eyes widened, a deer caught in the glare of truth. But before she could answer, Mia tapped the screen again, rewinding to a moment I hadn't noticed before. The dome light caught Alex's face as he leaned back, and for a split second, his expression wasn't just guilty. It was smug, like a man who'd played a game and won. Mia's finger froze, and she zoomed in further, revealing a slip of paper with numbers scrawled in Sarah's handwriting. "That's not work stuff," Mia said, her voice shaking with betrayal. "That's a withdrawal slip. For the fund. You were planning to take it, weren't you? You and Alex." The room tilted, the air so thick it felt like wading through mud. "It's not what it looks like," Sarah stammered, her calm facade crumbling. "We were just helping each other. Alex needed money for his business. It was temporary. Alex jumped in his voice, too smooth, too practiced. Yeah, it's just a loan, Mia. You know I'm good for it. We're family, right? But his words rang hollow, and the tattooed compass on his wrist seemed to point straight to his lies. Robert stepped forward, his bad knees forgot in his face, a map of rage and grief. You've been stealing from us. He said not a question, but a verdict. From the fund we built for the kids, for our home, for everything we've worked for. Patricia's eyes filled with tears, her hand reaching instinctively for the place card with Sarah's name, as if she could erase this moment. Jake, usually silent, spoke up, his voice raw. You used Lily and Tommy as an excuse, didn't you? All those late pickups and art classes you were with him. The second twist hit like a freight train. Sarah and Alex weren't just betraying our marriage. They were siphoning the family fund, the lifeline we'd all sacrificed for, to fuel Alex's gambling debts, a secret Mia later whispered he'd been hiding for years. The outrage burned hotter now, the kind that would make anyone hearing this story seethe, stealing from a family's future, from a grandfather's retirement, from children's dreams, all while hiding behind the facade of family. But the worst was yet to come. Mia's face changed to shadow, crossing her features like a storm cloud over water. She set her phone down on the coffee table, her hands shaking, and looked at Sarah with a tenderness so raw it hurt to witness. There's something else, she said, her voice dropping an inch deeper. I didn't want to do this here, but I can't keep it in anymore. She pulled up another file on her phone, not footage this time, but a document, its edges crisp, even in the dim light. I had my suspicions, she said, her eyes locked on Sarah's. About Tommy. The room went deathly still, the kind of silence that feels like it's holding a blade to your throat. What about Tommy? I asked, my voice, barely audible dread pooling in my gut. Mia swallowed her gaze, flickering to me, then back to her sister. I did a DNA test. Months ago, when Sarah started acting strange when Alex was around too much. I used Tommy's hair from his brush, and he's not yours, James. He's Alex's. The third twist landed a gut punch that stole the air from the room. Tommy, our 3-year-old, the boy I'd rocked to sleep, whose toy trucks littered our living room, wasn't mine. Sarah had let me raise him, let me pour my heart into him, while knowing he was the child of her affair with her sister's husband. The betrayal wasn't just personal. Now it was a violation of everything sacred, a lie that twisted the knife through family trust and fatherhood. The kind of deception that would make any listener's blood boil, a betrayal of the American ideal of family loyalty, of a father's bond with his child. Sarah's face crumpled, tears spilling, but her words were defensive, desperate. I was lonely, James. You were always working, always gone, leaving me to hold everything together. Alex, he understood me. Alex tried to back her up, his voice faltering. It's not like we planned it, man. It just happened. We didn't mean to hurt anyone. But the room wasn't listening. Robert's fists clenched, his knuckles white. Patricia sobbed, clutching the table like it could anchor her. Jake stood, his voice shaking with rage. You let James raise a kid that wasn't his. You stole from Dad's retirement. What the hell is wrong with you? The outrage was palpable, a fire that burned through every bond we'd built. Sarah and Alex's lies had unraveled, not just a marriage, but a family, a legacy, a trust that spanned generations. They'd used Lily and Tommy as shields, hiding behind family errands, while draining the fund and rewriting my life with their deceit. The screen still glowed the frozen image of Sarah and Alex in the car, a testament to their betrayal. And I felt the smallest, strangest relief that the camera had no audio, that we were spared the words they'd whispered in that car, plotting to take everything we'd built. But the truth was out now, and it sat among us, unyielding, demanding we face it. The silence in the living room stretched like a taut wire vibrating with the aftershocks of truths too sharp to touch. The TV screen still held the frozen image of Sarah and Alex in the car, the bag of stolen secrets between them, the compass tattoo, a permanent mark of betrayal. But now, with Mia's DNA revelation hanging in the air, Tommy, my boy, not mine by blood, but by every sleepless night and scraped knee, I tended the room tilted towards something final, something irreversible. Lily's crayon scribbles echoed faintly from the next room, a reminder of the innocence we'd all fought to protect. And Tommy's laughter, so pure, felt like a ghost of the family I thought we were. The outrage burned hot, a fire fed by layers of deceit, the affair that shattered vows, the theft from the family fund that stole our future, and the paternity lie that twisted the very roots of who we were. It was the kind of betrayal that would make anyone hearing this story clench their fists, violation of marriage, of family bonds, of a father's unquestioning love, all wrapped in the selfish greed of two people who'd played us like fools. Sarah slumped in her chair, tears streaming now, her hand flying to her mouth as if she could shove the confessions back in. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she whispered, her voice breaking like thin ice. I was angry, James. Lonely. You were always at work building that future you promised, but I was here alone with the kids and Alex. He listened. It started small, just talks. Then the money. Alex's debts were piling up, gambling stupid bets, and I thought I could fix it. Hide it. The fund was just temporary, I swear. And Tommy. I didn't know at first, and then it was too late to say anything without destroying everything. Her words spilled out, defensive, desperate, but they rang hollow excuses layered over the wreckage she'd caused. Alex shifted his smug mask, shattered sweat beading on his forehead. Look, we can work this out, he said, his voice, cracking hands, raised like he was negotiating a bad deal. It's not like we hurt anyone on purpose. The money, I'll pay it back. And the kid? Tommy's still family, right? We're all in this together. But his eyes betrayed him, darting to the door, as if calculating an escape, the compass on his wrist, now a symbol of how lost he truly was. Robert stood taller, his bad knees locking with resolve, the remote dangling from his hand like a gavel. No, he said, his voice a low rumble. The stubbornness that had carried him through decades now turned to steel. You're not family, not anymore. You stole from us, from my retirement, from the kid's future. You lied about a child, let James raise him thinking he was his own. That's not loneliness. That's poison. He pulled out his phone, his fingers steady despite the tremor in his voice. I'm calling the police. Fraud, theft. There's evidence here. The fund transfers the footage. It ends now. Patricia nodded, her tears drying into resolve, her hand reaching for Mia's. We trusted you, Sarah. Both of you. But this is unforgivable. Jake stepped forward, his usual quiet fury boiling over. You used us all. The barbecues, the errands, the family help. It was all a cover. James, you were the good one always. We've got your back. Mia, her face etched with a pain that mirrored my own. looked at Alex with unbearable tenderness, turned to ice. "I'm filing for divorce tomorrow," she said, her voice soft but edged like a blade. "You don't get to walk away from this. Not after what you've done to my sister, to James, to our family." I sat there, the weight of it all pressing down. But beneath the hollow clarity of betrayal, something shifted, a strange budding relief. "I don't want to punish you," I said to Sarah, my words heavy but true. "I can take the blame. I own the nights I was absent, the times I mistook work for devotion. But I can't carry a story that keeps changing, one that poisons our kids, our home." Flashbacks. Flickered the gas station kiss in Iowa, peaches over the sink, with juice on our wrists, the early days when love felt like an open highway. But now that highway had led here to a maze of side streets built on lies. "We'll sort custody." I added my voice steady for the first time that night. "Lily and Tommy, they deserve truth, not shadows." Sarah's eyes met mine, glossy with remorse that came too late. But what I saw wasn't just regret. It was resignation, the spin unraveling at last. Alex tried one last plea. "Come on, Robert, think about the kids." But the room had turned a united front against the rot they'd brought in. Robert was already on the phone, his voice calm as he explained the fraud to the authorities, the footage and documents ready to send. Mia tapped her phone, pulling up divorce forms she'd apparently bookmarked weeks ago, her suspicions finally vindicated. As the call ended, the police promising to investigate the tension broke like a storm passing. Sarah and Alex were asked to leave their protests falling on deaf ears, the door closing behind them with a finality that echoed through the house. The silence that followed wasn't heavy anymore. It was clean, a space cleared of debris. I stood stepping toward the kids' room, where Lily looked up with wide eyes. "Is everything okay, Daddy?" she asked, and I knelt, pulling her and Tommy into a hug. "It will be, sweetheart," I said, meaning it. Tommy's small hand clutched my shirt, and though the DNA twist still stung like an open wound, he was mine in every way that mattered. The laughs, the bedtime stories, the love I'd given without question. Months later, as I replay this in my mind, the resolution brings a quiet satisfaction. Custody went my way, the kids thriving in a home free of secrets. The family fund was restored, Robert's retirement secure, thanks to the quick justice that exposed Sarah and Alex's schemes. Mia and I grew closer. Siblings-in-law turned allies, rebuilding the patchwork quilt one stitch at a time. Alex faced charges for the fraud, his gambling debts catching up in court. And Sarah, well, she faded into the consequences of her choices, a lesson in the cost of scorching the ground you stand on. I stepped out into the night air that evening, the cold cutting clean lines into my thoughts, the silence I left behind no longer mine to carry. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt lighter, the highway opening again, free from the maze. The truth hadn't just found us, it had set us free, a hard-won peace that made the outrage worth every burning moment. And in that clarity, I knew we'd rebuild stronger with the family that had always been there waiting in the light. The night air had cut through me as I stepped out of Robert and Patricia's house, the cold, slicing clean lines through the fog of that evening's revelations. The silence I left behind in their living room wasn't mine to carry anymore. It belonged to Sarah and Alex now, a weight they'd woven with their own hands. Months have passed since that dinner, since the footage lit up our driveway like a courtroom, since the truth about Tommy's paternity and the stolen family fund cracked open the foundation of our lives. And yet, as I stand here now, in the quiet of a new morning, I feel the first real breath I've taken in years, like a man stepping out of a maze onto an open highway, the horizon clear at last. Lily runs ahead of me in the park, her laughter a bell that rings brighter than Mia's ever did her pigtails bouncing as she chases a butterfly across the grass. Tommy toddles behind his toy truck, gripped tight, his small legs pumping to keep up with his sister. I watch them, my heart a tangle of love and ache, knowing Tommy's blood isn't mine, but feeling every moment of fatherhood in my bones, the sleepless nights, the Band-Aids on tiny knees, the stories I read until my voice grew hoarse. The DNA test changed nothing about that. He's my son, not because of biology, but because I chose him, just as I chose to fight for the life we're rebuilding now. The legal fallout came swiftly, a kind of justice that felt both brutal and necessary. Sarah and Alex faced charges for fraud, the bank records and footage undeniable proof of their siphoning from the family fund. Alex's gambling debts unraveled in court, his charm no match for the paper trail that showed thousands diverted from our collective trust. Sarah, stripped of her excuses, took a plea deal her name, now a whisper in the family she'd once anchored. Mia's divorce was finalized in weeks. Her strength, a quiet fire that burned through the hurt. She sold their house, moved closer to Robert and Patricia, and started teaching art classes at the community center, where Lily now paints messy masterpieces every Saturday. The family fund was restored, piece by painstaking piece, with the court ordering restitution and my overtime hours filling the gaps. Robert's retirement is secure. Now his bad knees no longer a worry as he and Patricia plan a quiet trip to the coast, something they hadn't dared dream of before. Jake, once lost to his phone screen, has stepped up, helping with the kids. When I'm at work, his sarcasm softening into a loyalty I hadn't expected. We're a smaller family now, but stronger stitched together, not by tradition, but by truth, each thread tested and found unyielding. I think back to that night, sometimes the clatter of forks, the sting of Sarah's slap, the way the TV screen held us like a photograph, exposing the cracks we'd all ignored. I see her face, in flashes her jaw strong in the Iowa gas station, light her eyes soft with peach juice on her wrists, and I grieve what we were not, because I want it back, but because it taught me what I could survive. I was absent too, mistaking work for devotion, letting the kids' bedtime stories become my laptop's glow. But I'm here now, present in a way I wasn't before, building a future, not on promises, but on moments. Lily's butterfly chase, Tommy's sleepy hugs, Mia's quiet nods across the dinner table. The outrage that burned that night, the kind that would make anyone hearing this story clench their fists at the betrayal of family, of fatherhood, of trust, has settled into something else, a satisfaction that runs deeper than vengeance. Sarah and Alex didn't just lose us. They lost themselves, their lies, a fire that scorched the ground they stood on. We, on the other hand, found our way back. The highway stretches out again, not the endless one of youth, but a new one paved with choices we make every day, to be better, to be whole. I scoop Tommy up as Lily calls me to see her butterfly, and for the first time in years, The weight I carry is light. The truth no longer a bomb, but a beacon guiding us home.